The body reacts to fear as if it could be more than one thing, something that might have varying levels of importance to us. This means we react differently to it, depending on what is happening to and around us. Here we'll take a look at how this works to discover more about the 5 stages of fear. If you're a neuroscientist or biologist, you'll likely put fear down to the flight or fight response. This was described first by Walter Bradford Cannon in 1915 and is sometimes labelled hyperarousal or acute stress disorder. It may even be known as the general adaptation syndrome, particularly in formal scientific circles. This is all thanks to the tireless work of Hans Selye. We know a lot about it, of course, but as is usual in such circumstances, it can't really be packaged up too neatly. Most scientists are happy to live with the following 5 stages. The first is about perception. The brain detects what might be dangerous via our senses. Something we see, hear, touch. It then signals other parts of the body to do something about it. But we receive thousands of signals from our senses all the time. The amount of information this generates is simply staggering. From what we can tell, most of this is routed to a part of the brain capable of sorting it out and then making sure it's dealt with in a way that makes best sense. This is called the thalamus. Here it is in the middle of our brain. It acts like a sort of relay centre, sending sensory information to the right place in the body so that our numerous systems, organs and glands and muscles and combined mobilities can act on it. The next stage marks the start of the flight or fight response in earnest. In the main, we think we know how this works, but scientists differ in their views about the detail of what is happening in the thalamus at this point. Some prefer what is called the low road theory. Here the thalamus sends the information it has collected directly to another part of the brain for assessment. This is called the amygdala, round about here. There are actually 2 amygdala, or amygdalae, one in each brain hemisphere, but we usually think of it as one thing. The amygdala tends to take few risks as far as emergencies are concerned, and is inclined to shoot first and ask questions later. It can call for a whole series of responses across the body in the quickest possible time, making this route very fast, but also a bit skittish, trigger-happy or unreliable. Other scientists prefer what is called the high road theory. Here, the thalamus sends its sensory information to both the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, here at the front of the brain, at the same time. The cortex actually consults with the hippocampus, near the amygdala, about any relevant memories and concepts that may be stored there. Whilst the amygdala is panicking its way into action, the cortex is thinking about the situation a little more carefully. If it decides that the stimulus isn't really a threat after all, it sends signals to the amygdala to calm itself down, take 5 and stop whatever it's doing. All of this happens at something close to light speed, of course, but many of us will have felt something akin to this when we've been startled. A bit like a rush of blood or the hair standing up at the back of our necks. The messages from the amygdala, if they're allowed to get there of course, are then received by yet another part of the brain called the hypothalamus, around here. This sets up stage 3, the triggering of the sympathetic nervous system. The hypothalamus acts as a sort of command centre, a place from where the body manages its continuing response to the emergency. This involves the release of adrenaline and the suppression of systems that normally prevent us from overworking. The overall effect is exceptional and intense, but the aim is to increase the body's state of alert, prepare us for action, and, of course, to take it. Which leads us to stage 4. This involves dramatic physiological changes affecting our heart, our eyes, lungs, muscles, and blood flow, and many other parts of the body we don't usually talk about. Our lungs deconstrict to take in more oxygen, and our heart supplies us with more blood cells to carry more nutrients, which can then be sent more readily to all parts of the body, but particularly our muscles. Our eyes improve, and our focus increases. Non-essential systems like digestion or immunity are put on hold. Muscles tense for action, and energy stores are made ready to provide us with large amounts of stamina or force very quickly. We even become super slimmers, breaking down stored fats more easily. The thalamus may have started all this off, but it too gets caught in this general alert, demanded by the sympathetic nervous system, and starts to operate at greater sensitivity and intensity. We may become less aware of pain, and emotions become more charged, making us more aggressive and, it has to be said, fearful. The effect tends to keep the loop going for as long as our bodies can cope with it, or until we calm down. Which brings us finally to stage 5. This deals in recovery. Once the threat is over, our parasympathetic nervous system promotes relaxation. Our heart rate and breathing slows down, and the body's chemical balance returns to normal. Eventually, we become better able to think rationally, and we recover our ability to plan, prepare, and solve problems, rather than remain only in the moment, frightened, confused, and alone. Now, you may think that the amygdala is at the root of it all, the home of fear, the place where we can pin the blame. If we didn't have it, or them, then fear would disappear and we could go about our business in a calmer and more rational manner. Lazy or unsophisticated scientists sometimes even argue this, but they're wrong. The problem with this sort of idea is that the amygdalae also have more complex and subtle functions than the one we've just described. They help us recognize emotional nuance, enable our sense of empathy, and make us more sensitive to personal context. We also know that amygdala dysfunction is linked to continuing trauma for some people, not the removal of it. Seems the amygdala, as far as the brain is concerned, might actually heal our distress as often as it causes it. We're left thinking that fear can't really be placed in the amygdala, at least not solely. Indeed, it might not be in the body at all. This is because the flight or fight response relies on parts of the body that react in just the same way to things other than fear, such as illness or stress. And fear doesn't always go away after the response has done all it can do. So, if it isn't in the body, just where does fear lurk? Where does it hide? What do you think? Let me know. And if you found this video interesting, leave a like or share, even subscribe. Check out other videos on this channel. Trust me, there's much more to fear than this. However, no matter what you're thinking, remember fear can be many things, much more than we sometimes know. Indeed, the only thing we really need to fear is ignorance.